Okay.
Okay, I'm just setting it up right now to live stream the Zoom meeting to Facebook Live. It'll be just one moment.
Okay, sounds good. You know what? I think I might grab a pillow real fast. Might be a little bit better here. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay.
Okay, everyone. Welcome to the Good in the Head podcast. My name is Pete Jones, and I am good in the head. Today, we have a special guest, a friend of mine for quite a few years now. We met on Facebook quite a while back in one of the groups that we're a part of together. And I've learned a lot from this man over the years, and I'm really excited to have him on as a guest today. We'll be reviewing his childhood, his life, some of his life experiences, the things that he has learned to upgrade his mind, body, heart, and soul, and some of the practices that he uses to continuously up level in his own personal life and in a collective creation of the reality that we're all a part of. Justin Birholz, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I'm super excited to be here. I know we've been friends for several years now, and it's been a long time coming. So I'm really excited to sit down and do this. Yeah.
And we were talking a little bit before the show, and I know it really is all about timing, and I think this is the perfect time for this to happen. And you were expressing that you're going to be creating some a YouTube show and having on some guests that you've learned from and connected with over the years. And I'm super excited to see some of that. I really am.
Yeah, so I have a few plans for this year upcoming, starting obviously with the March Magic Challenge releasing and starting to promote here starting on March 1st. And so my plan is to branch out into video content during the course of the year, starting with doing like live videos during the challenge. I'm planning on doing one live video at the beginning of each week, introducing the practices and the challenge. And then I kind of want to use that as like practice doing video content because I'm really not used to that. And then after that, I want to create the YouTube channel and start doing some like historical profiles of the Christian mystics and the other, kind of saints and sages that I really have learned a lot from, and I think have a lot to offer, to the current time that we're in. And I want to do, interviews with some of the amazing people that I've met over the course of this journey. I've been really fortunate to meet people from all over the world, from all different traditions and religions. And they all have such amazing things to share. And I really want to get them on, to interview them and let them share their message with, with the wider audience, with some of my other friends. So yeah, really excited about that. And starting with this, first thing.
I think that'll be a super useful tool. I created Good in the Head in the beginning because I had this super strong new belief that everything that I was thinking was empowering me to create a completely different reality. And while that's true, that was just one component.
Yeah.
While I was all about the mind at first, now I realize that it's not just about the mind, it's about the heart, it's about the body and the nutrition we feed it, and especially our true identity as a soul. And I view you as someone that I esteem as a spiritual man, a good man, and a learned studier. And so I was really excited to get you on the show to sort of provide a platform so that you can empower others who are seeking out similar things with new ideas and practices and habits and different perspectives, all these things, and nutrition tips, especially. I know that really into that.
Yeah, that's where my journey really started, was a number of years ago. I didn't feel well, physically, mentally, emotionally. And so I was like, I just kind of had this feeling I had to make some kind of, changes to start getting healthier. Because I was young, I'm like in my 20s, and so like, why do I feel like crap, So, and so my partner and I, Heather, we've been together for a very long, over 10 years now, a really long time. And so she's been along this whole time. She's been a integral part of the journey. And so we decided together we wanted to start eating healthier. But 7, 8 years ago, I really had no idea what that meant. How do you eat healthier? So I started researching. I love reading scientific research, and so I just started reading about nutrition and about exercise and all this kind of stuff. And we started with eating more whole grains and adding some more vegetables to our meals. And then it kind of just over time got just as we learned more, we just got progressively better and better. And so a couple of years ago, we were living in Costa Rica, and the price of meat down there was really high. A lot more than it is at just the supermarket here in the U.S. But fresh fruits and vegetables that were local and organic and really amazing were really cheap. And so we were like, well, we wanted to save money, and we wanted to eat better too. And so while we were there, we just kind of slowly, accidentally transitioned to being vegetarians. It wasn't really like necessarily purposeful or intentional at first. And I think literally Heather created a meal plan for the week, and we looked at it and went, wait, there's no meat on that meal plan, for a whole week, really, And so we, from there, moved back to the US, and there's a lot more options here. There it was kind of limited to what you could buy. There wasn't like any kind of meat substitutes or anything like that. And so once we moved back here, now we're, fully vegetarian, mostly plant-based. We don't eat a whole lot of dairy, but sometimes we eat like pizza and stuff because it's good.
It is.
But, yeah.
Cauliflower crust. There's all kinds of healthy flours to make the dough with.
Yeah. Sometimes we do that kind of stuff too. So nutrition was really the starting point. And what we noticed is as we, ate more varieties of vegetables, as we ate less, processed food, less, processed grains, and less meat and dairy, we just had more energy and we felt better, And so then we're like, well, if we feel so much better, why would we go back? It didn't make any sense. And for myself, I had some kind of like chronic digestive issues as well that just caused a lot of discomfort in my life, and kind of was just kind of hampering my quality of life. And that just went away basically immediately when I stopped eating meat.
Wow.
And hasn't really come back. So for me, that was really huge, just to have so much more energy and so much more peace in my body if I don't have that is going on. So yeah, that was one of the starting points. And at the time, I was running a food and recipe blog called Chefing Around that I did for a number of years. And so I was kind of sharing my journey and sharing with people how to make healthy meals full of, well-rounded meals full of a variety of vegetables and stuff. And yeah, that was the beginning. And then from there, started learning about other things like meditation and spiritual practices and stuff. But nutrition was definitely the starting point.
So your blessing in life that sort of altered the trajectory and put you onto this current path you're on was physical pain.
Definitely. One way, because what really started my transition from just looking at the physical to also looking into changing my mental and emotional and spiritual worlds or aspects of myself was another time of severe physical pain. I got into a really horrible car accident in January of 2015, and I was leaving work. At the time, I was managing a restaurant, and I would work overnight from like 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I would the truck would come and deliver all the food for the week, and there'd be like 200 boxes, and they all weighed like 40-50 pounds. I'd have to unload them, rotate all the stock, reload the walk-ins and the back of house and everything, and then do some management work. And then I would leave when the opening crew was coming in. And this was in Seattle, Washington. And so I'm leaving at 6 a.m. in the middle of January. It is pitch black, absolutely no visibility. It's foggy, rainy, the worst possible driving conditions you could probably ever imagine. And I was pulling out of the parking lot and just got hit by a truck. There was a highway that the store was on. And I got hit by a truck at what they called highway speed. It's probably around 50 miles an hour, really hard, into my driver's side door. And so the car, spun completely 180 degrees around and was in the middle of the highway. And I kind of came to consciousness because it kind of knocked me out for a second, and realized I was like in the middle of a highway and it's pitch black and there's cars going by, and it was really, really dangerous situation. And my whole driver's side door was stuck, it was completely destroyed. And so somehow I managed to crawl out through the passenger side door and across the highway and up onto the curb. And I actually ended up calling 911 myself somehow. I honestly have no idea, because I was like going in and out of consciousness this whole time. And so they, ambulance came and picked me up. Luckily, Seattle has one of the top trauma hospitals in the world called Harborview. And they helicopter people in from like states away when they're in really bad accidents and stuff to be treated at that hospital. And I was only about 40 minutes away from there. And so I was taken there by ambulance, and it had fractured the whole left side of my skull, multiple places, and separated one of the sutures in your skull where it fits together. It had kind of pulled apart and broke the whole left side of my rib cage. And there were shards of glass just stuck all into the side of my face and head and neck and everything. My shoulder was torn and my left knee was torn. It was just really, really severely injured. And I had a really severe traumatic brain injury as well. And so that kind of, totally disrupted my world.
Oh, yeah.
And so what happened was I had already been on that path of like, I want to feel better. I want to get healthier. And so we had tried to, start eating healthier. And then that happened. And it was like, well, now I can't even work out for who knows how long. I was doing very physical work before, like unloading trucks and stuff like that. I couldn't do that anymore. And so it was a really difficult thing to process, not just emotionally, because I felt like I was just getting to that point where I was like starting to work out, starting to eat healthier. I was doing great at work. And then this horrible thing happened. And I felt like my whole world was, unraveling. And
How long were you in the hospital recovering after that?
they actually let me go the same day, which is probably not good, because I had a serious traumatic brain injury, like I was saying. But luckily I was fine, but it took me a long time. I was kind of bedridden for a few weeks afterwards. And then I just had this really kind of spirit of, I'm just going to work through it. And so I went back to work, I think after 2 weeks, when I was still severely injured. But I was, I had to work for the money and everything. But and I really felt passionate about my job. I was in a position of leadership. I was, managing a restaurant too. But the process of recovering from that, physically and emotionally and everything, is really what led me into looking into the more than just physical. Because at that point in my life, I was not religious or spiritual or anything at all. I didn't meditate. I was not into any of that. I would have basically considered myself like agnostic, I guess. I was very much into science and reading, the science of health and wellness, but not even into like the science of like, meditation or mindfulness. Like I wasn't even interested in any of that. And then I had this moment where I was face to face with death. I was right there. I could have, maybe even should have died in that moment. And so it just radically changed my perspective of life. And I remember kind of coming to consciousness in the ambulance and then realizing, okay, I'm not going to die. Like, there was moments where I was like, I might, it was literally going in and out of consciousness. Like I could die any moment. And then I remember realizing at one point, no, I'm going to make it. I'm going to pull through. And just started crying and, just overwhelming emotional experience. Like I literally felt like I had been reborn, like I'd been given, a second chance right there. And so it was just this immediate, like, I'm not going to waste it. I can't, and so it was a really, really transformative point. But I had years ahead of me of just horrible pain and suffering that I was going to have to, work through. And that was really the catalyst that made me, take it seriously, really seriously. And so almost exactly 2 years after that, I had that really profound kind of spiritual awakening experience, like a really, kind of mystical experience.
Which I'm interested in.
And we should definitely come back to that. Yeah. So my path to growth was definitely through pain, and I hope that's not everyone's path. And so my goal is to help people who don't go through, profound suffering, to still have motivation to grow and transform. And so I've found ways to, open myself up and grow, intentionally since then. That was very much just smack out of nowhere.
That reminds me of something that I remember thinking a couple of years ago that I really loved, and I can't even remember where I got it, or maybe it was a conglomeration of a bunch of different teachings. But I now believe that it's possible that, the universe was designed literally to kick our teeth in if we're not kicking our own teeth in. But if we're intentionally, like you said, designing a life and habits and perspectives and beliefs that are empowering in the creation process and allowing that to unfold from within, then the universe or the things without sort of ease up, and they'll leave us alone if we're doing our work ourselves. But the moment that
Hmm.
we're no longer purposefully living our lives, things happen to remind us that, hey, you do it or I will.
Yeah. No, I think so. Yeah. As much as those moments are difficult and hard, yeah, sometimes it's what we need, you know. It
I've now
certainly was for me.
pain is a blessing. I believe that. And it isn't always necessary for everyone, but for
Yeah.
me, it was. Jim Rohn always taught, if you want things to change, you must change. If you
Yeah.
want things to get better, then you must get better. I
Hmm.
really believe that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, me too.
So,
So, uh, let's see. I did want to actually go back, since we told that story. That's a good one. But I wanted to go back and talk about intuition and trusting in divine providence, I guess, is what I would call it, because that's one of the things that I think has really set my life and my trajectory apart from the very beginning. So when I was actually, let's see, I was 2 years old, almost three. I think it was the summer before I turned three, and I was with my family, and we were visiting family friends in Colorado. And they have this property. It's like halfway up of a plateau, like a big, huge plateau. And up on top, there's like a resort, and there's really nice houses and stuff like that. And their property was kind of halfway up and they had a lot of land around it and stuff. And so we were there visiting, and I was, this young child, and they had a little bookshelf full of kids' books because they had a child around my age. And every night I kept bringing this book to my mom and making her read it to me. And it was this story. It's kind of like based on a story from the Bible about a shepherd who has a whole flock of sheep, and one of the sheep gets lost. And the whole point of the story is that he leaves everything to go find that one lost sheep, because they're all meaningful, every one of us. And so the story is that God cares about every single one of us, and that if one of us gets lost, he will do what it takes to go find us and bring us back. Like we were just saying, that sometimes the universe or whatever does what it needs to do to bring you back. So what happened was I kept bringing this book to my mom day after day, and she got so annoyed with it. She didn't want to read me this story anymore. So she hid it. And she was like, there's tons of other books, so pick a different one, right? And so I somehow found that book again. I bring it back to her and I make her read it to me again, right? And then the next day, I'm out playing with their daughter, who was around my age, and we had these little plastic arrows, that kids like to shoot and play with. And somehow I managed to shoot my arrow over the fence. And it was like a barbed wire fence, because they're kind of out in, middle of the mountains in Colorado. And somehow as this young child, I also managed to get across the barbed wire fence on the other side to go find my arrow. And then I'm not sure what happens, but I get lost, like completely lost. And I'm this young 2-year-old, almost 3-year-old child wandering the wilderness of Colorado completely on my own. And my the girl runs back inside and tells them, and my parents and her parents come out, and they're looking for me, and they can't find me. I'm gone, just completely just vanished. I have no idea how this even happened, but it did. And so they contact people in the town. It's a tiny town. There's like a couple hundred people. The whole town shuts down. Everyone in the whole city comes out, and they're combing the hills. They're searching for me, massive search and rescue effort. And somehow I managed to, over the course of like a whole afternoon, several hours of it, 100 acres of wilderness, until I found someone who just happened to be home for lunch, who never went home for lunch ever. But that day, for some reason, he decided to come home, and I stumbled across his property after I'm just this child just lost in the wilderness, and I found him, and he took me up to the resort on the top of the plateau, because I kept telling him that I came from up there, because I was so lost as a kid. I had no sense of direction. I'd kind of been just wandering in forest and stuff. And so eventually I was reunited with my family. But there was a reason that I found that book. And it was, my intuition, even at that young age, was telling me the message that I needed to hear to make it through that ordeal. It was like a vision quest or something you'd send a young man on, in a traditional culture. And yet here I was as a 2-year-old child thrust into this dangerous and crazy ordeal.
What was the message then that you now think that book gave you that helped?
Well, it was that contact with my intuition and with what some people would call like their guardian angel. And it was that hearing that message that if I get lost, or if any sheep gets lost, that the shepherd, that God, that my parents will come and find me, that that any person is important enough to be found, and that would happen. And so I think it was definitely my guardian angel looking out for me, because I don't know, it was an extremely challenging experience, a lot of fear. And if I hadn't had that message just repeated, affirmed in my mind going into that, I don't know, what would have happened. But it ended up working out. And ever since that moment, I've had both a real deep connection with nature, with the natural world, and with what I would say is, for my guardian angel, or whatever you want to call it, my intuition. And it started there. It started before I was really even a person. It was my very first memories from that experience. But so young.
That's a really interesting story. I really like that. And the fact that it, you were comforted at that young age from this story that had been repeated to you, day after day. That had to come in useful for sure. I'm glad you were found.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah. So, that was the first time that I easily could have died there. It could have been the end, but it wasn't. It was just a beginning. And I think, it's hard to kind of fully assess the impact of an experience like that on someone so young, but I definitely think that had a lot to do with my real deep, profound kind of longing to connect with nature, that has really driven kind of the course of my life. And funny enough, when I was in college, after my second year of college, I was in Fresno, and I didn't really know what to do. I had been training to go into real estate appraisal, and the whole real estate market kind of collapsed. This was in 2008, when there was that, real estate that burst. And so that whole industry kind of was collapsing around me as I was trying to get into it. And so I felt really lost again, and I didn't know what to do. And so I left Fresno, and I went back to that very same property in Colorado, because they're still family friends. And, it's so funny. I just kind of realized this recently, but I went back there to find myself and my path and my connection to my intuition again. And what ended up happening was I went there, and I was like, maybe I'll just be there for the summer and then come back and, get some.
You broke up. What was that? Get some clarity?
Clarity. Yeah. On what I want to do with my life, moving forward.
In a way, you went there to seek divine guidance. so to speak.
Yeah. I went back to a place where I was lost to find something, within myself. And I did. And what ended up happening is I really decided at that point that I was just going to listen to my intuition, listen to that guidance, and go with it no matter what. And the first thing that ended up happening was I wasn't going to go back to Fresno. I ended up hopping in a car with someone I met there and riding with him to Seattle, where I'd never lived. I didn't have any connections. I didn't have any job. I didn't have any home. Didn't have any family. I only knew like one person in the entire city, I think, at the time. But for some reason, I knew that I had to go there and that I had to do it. And I had to challenge myself as much as possible. And so I brought as little as possible with me. So I essentially took like an ascetic journey. I had a suitcase, a laptop, a cell phone, and like a couple changes of clothes. And that was it.
Necessities
all
only.
I had.
Isn't that sort of a really fun way to sort of start over with hardly anything, just to see what will happen next?
It was crazy. Yeah. And that was
It
the
is
thing.
crazy.
It was really to see where it went and to really challenge myself, because I had to step up to meet that challenge just to survive. And so, yeah, I ended up in Seattle. I had a place to stay for like the first 2 nights that I was there. And then the third night, I was walking down the streets of Seattle with my suitcase, with all my stuff, all my belongings in the world at that time, and no idea what I was going to do that night, where I was even going to sleep, nothing. And I met a couple people, and one of them called me up and said, "Hey, we're having this like barbecue thing at my house tonight. Do you want to come by? You can get some free dinner, meet some people." I'm like, okay, what else am I going to do, right? I have nowhere to go, nowhere to be. So I show up at this place with my suitcase. I don't know anyone there except for the one person I'd met. And
all the while, I'm sure you were scared, but still trusting in divine providence.
Yeah, I was. The fear at that point was minimal, because I really felt like I was on the right path. As challenging as it was, I felt like I was, where I needed to be and doing what I needed to be doing. And I felt very confident in that. I had no money, no place to stay, nothing like that. So definitely there was some fear there. But I ended up meeting someone at that who let me stay with him and like just sleep on his floor. And so
awesome. Been there, done that. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was a really cool guy. He let me sleep on his floor. And so I'm sleeping on his floor, and I was like going looking for work during the day, walking around Seattle. I was walking like miles and miles a day, just walking around exploring. And a couple of days later, I ended up meeting someone else who says, "Oh, well, my dad's hiring. Do you want to come in for an interview on Monday?" And so I go into the interview, get hired, start work on Wednesday, get an apartment that week, end up meeting someone who decided that I was trustworthy enough to spot the deposit on, and he would let me, pay him back because I had no money. And I had just gotten a job. And, from there, I ended up just making this really beautiful life in Seattle, and ended up meeting some really cool people who are still great friends of mine to this day.
Is that where you met Heather as well, or?
Yeah. And then the first person that I lived with was a jazz piano player. And he was going to school there at music school that was like across the street. And a couple of years later, Heather came to that school to go to school for music. And she graduated there. She has a bachelor's in composition from there. She's an amazingly talented songwriter. And so, yeah, that was how I met her. And, she is definitely my life partner. I just, we have an amazing relationship. It's been, like I said, over 10 years. and she was definitely the person who I needed to meet.
And she was
And
there when you got in that accident, I'm guessing, right? I mean,
yeah, yeah. So at that point, Heather and I had been together for a few years, just a couple of years, when I got into the accident, and she was there to help me through that. And that relationship with her was absolutely fundamental to who I am today. So trusting in my intuition, trusting in divine providence, going to Seattle when I didn't know anyone, didn't have anything, had no certainty, ended up just absolutely being the best thing that ever happened to me.
how did you let go of the need for security, the need for surety?
Mm, um, it was just simply that I knew that I was listening, to my intuition, to that divine, spirit within me, and that I was trusting in that fully.
Wow.
And when I just surrender and trust that fully, there wasn't really any fear about the uncertainty.
There's a quote that I really love by Melody Beattie. It says, letting go is the action part of faith. It is a behavior that gives God and the universe permission to send us what we are meant to have.
Mm-hmm.
You're a perfect example of that. That's some
That's
faith and courage.
great. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's exactly it, So yeah, that whole story started, when I was 2 years old, and then came back full circle when I was an adult and kind of starting out again. And then from there, Heather and I together have been on just an amazing journey. Like I said, we went to Costa Rica, spent a year there together. That was really amazing.
What took you guys
And
there? What made you decide to do that?
yeah, so Heather, when she was a young child, I think she was 7 at the time. She was at like a 4th of July party, and her neighbors had a dog, and a firework went off, and the dog bit her face.
Oh.
And it, kind of caused a scar on her nose and stuff. And so as a part of that, she had like a structured settlement, I guess. And when she turned 18 as an adult, it started paying out to her. And so she used a lot of it to pay for school. And then at a certain point, the last amount that she got from that was a large chunk. And she decided that she wanted to use it to move somewhere else and live somewhere else in the world and live abroad, for a number of reasons. It was after all the healing from my accident and everything. And so I was kind of recovering, but we just didn't really have a strong kind of foundation where we were at in Seattle. We weren't really settled there. And she wasn't really happy there. And so, yeah, there was politics at the time as well. Like Trump had just been elected, and that was kind of hard. It was actually not kind of, it was really hard on her. It was really hard on her. And so she wanted to leave. And I was like, great, let's do it. Let's go live somewhere. So we researched all these places all around the world, and looked into the logistics and the politics and all the stuff of all these different places. And we decided that Costa Rica was the place that we wanted to go to, out of everywhere in the world. And
people are moving there now. Brendan Burchard and his wife moved there last year. And a lot of influencers, a lot of ayahuasca retreats are going up over there. Interesting.
It's an amazing place. It's a really amazing place. It is such a cool place to live. The culture there is very environmentally focused. It's very, natural, very, their motto is Pura Vida, which is like pure living. The simple life, just enjoying the simple things in life. And so it was a really awesome place to live. We moved there, made friends right away, had this awesome house that was in a beach town. There was like a rainforest across the street, and then like a 15-minute walk to the beach. It was just, paradise, basically. And so we really loved it. There was really cool people there, really great community, and just a lot of life. It's just teeming with life. There's just insects and animals and plants and just so much of it that you can kind of like feel the life force or energy just around you. It's just really intense there. So it's not surprising to me that, spiritual retreats and these ceremonial centers and stuff are there, because you really feel that that kind of life around you, and you really feel yourself as a part of it there. I feel like a lot of places in the world, people are so separate from nature. But there you can't be, because nature is just coming down on you,
Wow, sounds amazing. Had you not gone to Costa Rica with Heather for that year, what would you have missed out on that is now a main part of your life?
Man. Well, our cats, for one.
What's that?
Our cats.
Oh, your cats.
Yeah, we ended up rescuing our cats while we were there. And we ended up doing a lot of work with animals, like fostering dogs that were puppies, or they were sick or injured or something like that. That was a really cool experience to be able to take care of those animals. So I really gained a deeper connection with non-human life while I was there. I liked animals before, but after being there, after serving animals, after rescuing the cats, living in that environment where there's animals everywhere all the time, it really changed the way that I see the non-human beings, on Earth. Changed my relationship with them forever. And my relationship with Heather, because we got to spend all of our time together, during that time. And so our relationship really deepened and grew.
A lot of relationships, many of them, especially with the stressful times we're all a part of now in this current reality, people spend 5-10 minutes together and they're at each other's throats. It's sort of a great sign to be able to spend all your time confined with the person that you profess to love, and to see if that's true or not.
Yeah, it really tests you.
It's a great opportunity, and with this whole shutdown stuff and everybody staying at home, you figure it out real quick. Like, am I on the right path, or do I need to change something? Maybe it's myself. Maybe I need to seek other realities or different people or different environments. But the inner environment that we all had the opportunity to create during all these shutdowns and everything, in my opinion, it was a gift. In a lot of ways.
Yeah, it ended up working out unbelievably well for me. This is one of those times where once again, trusting in my intuition and just surrendering to that fully resulted in a really lucky experience, I guess. Some people might say. I don't really look at it as luck anymore. But what happened was, I'd been working as a restaurant manager once we got back here to LA, and I'd been doing that, and I was doing well at it. They were sending me around to go train other managers in other markets. They were flying me out to Texas and stuff like that. And so I had some great opportunities, but I wasn't really happy where I was. And my partner, Heather, was working at this local company here that was a small company, and they had a Christmas party. And so she could bring me to the Christmas party, as her plus one. And so I went with her, and we were sitting down at the table, and her, the CEO, the owner of her company, was there on the other end of the table. And during the course of the dinner, we just kind of like chatted a little bit, and there was just a little bit of a connection there. And he really liked me, and so we were leaving, and I was just planning on going home. I think I might have even had to work the next day or something, but he was like, "No, you've got to come out with us to the bar. You've got to come with me. Like, don't go home. I really want to talk to you more, come out with us. And I'm like, oh, all right, whatever. I guess I'll go with you, out to the bar. And so we ended up going out, and I got some one-on-one time with him, and we really connected. And I really like him. He's a really cool guy. And so a couple months later, his wife, who also worked at the company, asked Heather, just kind of out of the blue, so is Justin happy with his job where he's at right now? And she was like, well, it's okay, but he's not super happy there. And so she ended up talking to the CEO and kind of convincing him to give me a shot. And so he had already met me, and he really liked me, and he was like, oh yeah, well, let's see, we'll bring him in and see how it goes. And so came in, interviewed, got hired there, left the restaurant business. And then 2 weeks later, everything gets shut down for the pandemic. And that whole industry just tanked. I mean, the restaurant industry just nosedived right at the beginning of the shutdown. And so I might have lost my job, or even worse, I might have just been reduced down to like no hours, and, I would have been in a really bad place if I had stood time. Instead, I got hired at this new job, a new company where they provided us laptops and headsets, and we could work from home. And so I had this really secure, great job that I just started. And when everyone got sent home and all my friends are losing their jobs and all this stuff, I got this amazing opportunity that I still work there. I love it. And it happened literally 2 weeks after. And so
Divine Providence once again.
Exactly. It was just amazing. It was unbelievable. And then from there, Heather and I were working together, living together at home, and we were stuck home, because of the shutdown, and we weren't really going anywhere. And so that's when we decided that we needed to start working out together, because, I had been fully recovered from my accident for a little while at this point, but I really had lost all my muscle mass over the course of those years. Not being able to do any heavy lifting or anything, was really hard to get back into doing physical activity. My body was pretty messed up in a lot of ways. And so I needed someone to help me push through those initial months of really hard work to get back into exercising. And Heather needed someone to help hold her accountable as well. And so we started working out together while we were shut down in the pandemic. And we've, continued that to this day. Heather lost like over 40 pounds. I've gained about 5 to 10 of muscle mass, which was really cool. And so we've both gotten into just way better shape, and our lives have just really dramatically transformed for the better since the pandemic. It was like one of the best things that ever happened to us,
I honestly wish that were the truth for every living individual. I really do. And the truth is it's not. And a lot of people are suffering and they're going through pain.
I know.
And I hope someday that they can look back at this time and look at it as a gift in some way. But that's just incredible that you guys got such an amazing opportunity to reconnect and create that beautiful life together that you're now living.
Yeah, it was just really amazing. And so now we do spend all of our time together. Now we're going back to the office. We're not working at home anymore, but we work together all day, and then we come home, we work out together, we eat together, we work on our projects together, and we spend 24 hours a day all the time with each other. And we're at a point now where we can do that, and it works. It works really well. I mean, it's a real blessing. Yeah.
So with this new YouTube channel coming out, your blog, your website, everything, you've sort of been pushed onto these different paths in life that required you to acquire new skills and perspectives, beliefs, habits, practices. what's a list of the most important things you've learned that have been most useful and helpful in up leveling like your heart, mind, body, and soul? What is it you wish to share and teach most with others?
Yeah. So, like I said, trusting in your intuition, trusting in divine providence, and surrendering to that, huge. Another huge thing that for me has been really beneficial is choosing the hard path, not taking the easy way. Because if you take the easy way, you don't grow. You just stay where you are and you kind of go in circles. But if you take the hard path, even if there's uncertainty, or maybe especially if there's uncertainty, you're going to force yourself to grow because you have to rise to the challenge, right? Once you've made that choice and you're on that path, you don't have any choice but to rise to the challenge. And we really have a lot of potential within us, and I think people just don't believe in their own potential.
So things like studying, diet is hard for a lot of us. I know this for me.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that you do that I think is difficult is like being with your soulmate all the time, your life partner.
Yeah.
Some people find that challenging. What are some other challenging, hard, difficult things that you've experienced as well?
Well, some of the things I've already brought up, but just a good kind of story is like we went hiking the other day and we went to a new park. It's right down the street. We'd never been there before, and it was really foggy that morning. We couldn't see very far at all, and we get out and there's two paths, and one of them is kind of a slow, flat, wide path. It looks really like goes through the bottom of the canyon. Looks really nice, really calm, really peaceful. There was literally like a troupe of musicians going out to like film a music video out there or something. And then there was this other path that kind of went up like this, and it just went up into nothing because the fog was so thick. It was just this steep path going into mystery. And I went, and the whole thing I was saying that day is we had worked out really hard the day before, and I was like, we're just going to do something easy, Heather. Like, come with me. It'll be easy. We'll do a nice light hike. We get out there, and no, I could not take that easy path. I literally, there's something in me that just had to go up the steep path, the hard path. That time we ended up getting lost in the fog and almost not finding our way back, but it was so much fun, and it was a challenge, and it was hard, and there were moments where it was tense, but it was so much more rewarding when you do something that's difficult rather than just doing something that's easy, that where there's full certainty. That's just not rewarding.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love that. That's a great example. So trusting the divine, choosing to do hard things. What else is on that list?
I mean, believing in yourself and believing in your own potential. I think that's really, really big. The power of belief is underestimated, I think, by a lot of people. There's only a few people who I think are really talking about how powerful belief itself is. And those people are radically transforming the way that we see reality.
Absolutely.
And so I think if you really believe in yourself, that can make a huge difference in your life.
I love that one. Tom, Bill, you, and a lot of other teachers are out there describing how this reality is created consciously and intentionally, or unconsciously and unintentionally, through our beliefs and our perspectives. The way that we view things is just a confession of character. It's a projection of our inner world onto this outer world that collectively we all create. So if we're all creating in fear and all we do is watch the news, we might be in a little bit of trouble. If we're able to create from a place of love, however, that's a different creation entirely.
It is. Yeah. And it has the power to really dramatically transform people. Because if you're just fear or reacting out of a place of fear, what kind of happens is it just keeps reflecting back and forth. So your fear projects onto something or someone else, and then they reflect that back to you, and it just kind of builds this wave of fear and tension and
Yeah.
chaos. And what love can do is stop that, and you don't reflect that back. You just kind of accept that and go, okay, I understand you're afraid, but maybe we can make each other feel safe. And I think that's really kind of a foundation of love itself, is making other people feel safe so that they can be a better version of themselves, because you just
That's
can't do that if you're
awesome.
living in fear.
I love that. My wife Carla creates a safe environment for me to sort of
Mhm.
unfold as a flower, instead of being afraid and closing up tightly and not really creating or seeing anything beautiful. She's
Yeah.
created that for me, and now I'm able to create that for myself because of her. And I'm so grateful for a partner that provides that for me. That's big.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I feel exactly the same way, about Heather. There's no way that I would be who I am today without her there, and her love and her support for all these years. There's just no way.
I absolutely feel the same way about my wife. What a blessing to be able to say that
Yeah.
and mean it, That's
Yeah. No, it really is. Yeah.
so
It's wonderful.
trusting the divine, choosing to do the hard things, believing in yourself and your potential. What else are some
Mhm.
practices or beliefs or perspectives that have empowered you?
Well, there's a lot of practices, and as far as those mindset things, or concepts go, I'm actually releasing a whole set in March. So every single day, I have a post schedule that's going to come up on my blog, and every single one is like particular like message or mindset. And so the very first one is believe in yourself. That's the very first one, because I think that is, like I said, the most important. And then it goes from there, and it's going to introduce different topics, and it kind of moves from like the mental into the emotional, into the heart, and then into the abstract. And the later ones towards the end of the month are going to be really kind of abstract philosophical conceptions. But I'd really recommend people to come back to that if you want more of those like specific, mindsets.
So
As
is
far
this
as
going to be just the website that people need to go to, or is it going to be posted on like Instagram or Facebook, or what's the best way for people to reach that every day, and accept this challenge from you?
Yeah, so sign up for the email. If you go to justinbirholz.com /challenge, it'll take you to the opt-in page, and at the bottom you can sign up for the emails. And if you do that, you'll get all the emails that have a link to each contemplation. It'll be up on the blog, justinbirholz.com.
But the email will
And
come out daily with a link to that
mhm,
daily. Okay, good.
mhm.
I really wanted to do that.
Yeah, and it's going to be posted on my Facebook page for the website, because I have a justinbirholz.com page on Facebook, so it'll be on all of those. And then at the beginning of each week, I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live video, and I'll be introducing specific practices. So, yeah, I'd really like to talk about some of those. We've been talking about the mindset, which I really think is kind of a foundation that you need to have. And then once you have that mindset, what are the practices you do to keep yourself growing and expanding and keep your heart opening? And so those are the things I'm going to be introducing in the challenge, and I'd love to kind of chat about, I guess, now. So the first thing I would recommend for anyone these days would be some kind of breath work.
Daily, huh?
Yeah, daily. And the reason for that is that I used to recommend like mindfulness meditation or something more simple like that, but especially of the world, there's a lot of anxiety. It's really difficult for people to just sit down and do basic, simple mindfulness meditation. And so I think that's a really difficult way to start.
Mhm.
And so I've actually switched to recommending breath work first, because you're using your body to calm your mind down and to put you into that state, rather than trying to get to it just through your mind, which I think is going to be too difficult of a starting place for a lot of people.
I agree with that. I was doing just meditation for quite a while and then introduced breath work at the very beginning of it all. And I feel more rejuvenated, more energetic, more clear-headed. I get more oxygen in the body, and the mind, the soul, the heart, they all kind of work better when starting out with breath work, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been studying yoga for about 5 years now. And so pranayama, is a big part of yoga, one of the 8 limbs. And pranayama, a lot of people translate it as like breath work, but that's not really what it is. It's really working with your energy, working with your vital life force. That people translate it as breath work is because that's the best tool to access that energy. And so what you can do with your breath is it's directly, intimately connected with your nervous system. And so every time you breathe in, you're activating your sympathetic nervous system. And so you're increasing arousal, you're increasing, your concentration, and when every time you exhale, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and relax. And so what you can do, if you know that, you can take a quick assessment of your mental state and what task you're supposed to be performing, and you can adjust that by focusing on inhales or focusing on exhales to either give yourself more energy if you're feeling sleepy or groggy and you need to focus. You can do more inhale and longer inhale, less exhale or something. Or if you're anxious, and you're too much energy, too high, you can do the focusing on the exhales, and you can very quickly and easily calm your state down to find the right level that you need for whatever task you're supposed to be doing.
With technology, like people have the Ring or a Apple Watch, different things, and they can sort of experiment with what you just taught and see how their pulse changes for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. It's great with wearables. I have a Fitbit. I don't always wear it, but if you have the Ring thing too, you can really see that. And so there's a couple specific practices that I'd love to talk about because last year, when I went to my doctor for my regular checkup, pretty much everything was good, except that my lung capacity had decreased and I was using my rescue inhaler a lot more because I have allergies and asthma. And so that was kind of concerning for me because they had the numbers of last year and then this year, and my lung capacity and my breathing had gotten a lot more constricted. And so after that, he recommended that I go see an allergist and a couple other specialists. And I wanted to do that. I set the appointment, but I didn't want to just wait for that and hope that they're going to figure it out,
Or give you more medication.
Exactly. Yeah. So what I did is I decided to make doing breath work every morning a non-negotiable because that was my weakest spot physically. Right. Every other metric I was doing really great, but my breath was not there. It wasn't good. And it was affecting my, energy level and stuff. I wasn't getting the oxygen that I needed. And so I started doing the Wim Hof guided breathwork video every single morning. It's 10 minutes. It's quick. It's easy. It's guided. And it's been really powerful to do every day.
How's your lung capacity now as compared to the last time it was checked?
I like to have it checked, but
I'm curious to see what that'll be like.
I'm really curious because I no longer take allergy medication.
Wow.
At all. I was taking Claritin. I don't need to take that anymore. And I very rarely use my inhaler. I bring it with me, but I use it maybe once a week instead of every day.
I also started the Wim Hof breathing method and the video, the guided one you're talking about. I've been doing that a year and a half now, almost daily. And especially after work, if have any anxiety whatsoever, I use that. And holy crap, man, the emotional, spiritual, physical baseline is there. The breathing capacity is enlarged. Being able to hold your breath for a minute and a half, I never thought that would be possible.
Yeah, me either. I know. Yeah. I know. The first time I heard it and they're going, oh, you're going to do this retention for a minute and a half. I'm like, what? No,
Eyes get all
no, I
big.
can't.
What?
Yeah. 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 Definitely. But once you do it, you really feel this powerful change in your chemistry and your whole body.
Absolutely. I'll put links into the notes, by the way, too, for anyone listening, for the March challenge, the link to the Facebook page, this Wim Hof guided breathing meditation, and some other things as well. So sorry to interrupt.
No, that's perfect. Up for you to include, and it's Andrew Huberman's video called "The Science of Making and Breaking Habits." That's a lot of the science that I used to design my challenge. He explains there in great detail, better than I could, ever hope to probably explain it, because he's just such an amazing, science communicator.
Oh, so interesting.
That one is a lot of the science I used of forming habits. He explains really well in that video. So I'd love to link to that for people as well.
Awesome.
So breathwork is like the first thing that I recommend, especially if you're new to spiritual practice or meditation or something like that. Do that round of breathwork first, and then if you want to sit and meditate, you're going to have such an easier time, because it's already worked on your physiology to really balance you out, really mellow you out. And like you said, if you have that anxiety, it'll kind of clear that out pretty well.
Absolutely. And clearing the chakras and moving the energy through them and around in the form of a torus, spiritual teachings for centuries now have taught that we've got this energy that flows through us and around us constantly. Mm-hmm. And when we do this breath work, it opens that channel up and we become energized. We are energy, I love that teaching. That's cool.
Yeah. And you can feel it. You can feel it after you do the round and you're holding that breath hold. You can feel that energy going through, through your body and your fingers and everything. So yeah, you really feel it. I feel it literally like easing tension in places that I didn't even know I had tension. Like it'll feel like openings in my shoulder. I'm like, oh, that's amazing.
It's a relief.
So yeah. So I really highly recommend it. And then after that, I have my morning ritual. And so what I did is I took a lot of the neuroscience and the science of exercise and light exposure and all these things, and I created a very specific morning ritual for myself a number of years ago. I call it my soul. And so if you go to my website, justinbirholz.com, you can look through the spiritual practices category and you'll see the solar invocation. And that's my first thing that I do in the morning. And it involves a few different steps. So when I design rituals, I design them in a specific format based on, like I was saying, the psychology and the neuroscience of forming habits. And so what I've done is I've taken that science and I've applied it to my spiritual practice. And I've designed my spiritual practices based on that to make them effective on every level. And so the morning ritual starts out, the first thing I do is a moment of gratitude, because gratitude is so important to practice. It radically changes your relationship with yourself and with other things. So if you regularly express gratitude for something, it changes the way that you perceive that thing and the way that you relate to it. And so the very first thing I do is I express gratitude for the sun, because it's the morning, I'm trying to wake up, and I'm trying to change my relationship with nature so that things like the sun and the moon and the plants and the animals around me are a part of me, and we're all in harmony together instead of being my own dissonant thing fighting against that kind of natural flow and harmony around me. So I chose to use the words of St. Francis of Assisi, who's one of my favorite Christian saints. And I took a lot of his words and his prayers and his poems, and I adapted them into this whole set of spiritual practices. So I use some of his words where he expresses gratitude for the sun. And then I have a moment of just feeling that, feeling that gratitude before I start my practice. And it's really important to do that for a number of reasons. So that's the first thing. And then the second step is I actually do a round of sun salutations, which is, a yoga flow that's very familiar. What better physical practice to do in the morning when you're expressing gratitude for the sun than, a round of 3 sun salutations. And so that gets you into your body, the energy flow through your body, because you're really doing this flowing practice is what it is. And so you bring yourself into your body, you calm down a little bit, and then I sit. And so then I sit and I do my meditative or contemplative practice. After the gratitude, after the short round of the flow, I sit and I do my meditation or contemplation, whatever I'm doing. And then I wind down from there. So then I do another round of sun salutations to bring me up out of my body, because I sit in lotus pose at this point. It took me a few years of practice to be able to sit in lotus.
It's not easy.
No, it's not, especially for Western, people are used to sitting in chairs, and we're not used to sitting on the ground or anything. But I worked my way up to it. And so when I get out of that, I want to stretch myself out, get my energy really flowing again, get my breath flowing again. So I do another round of sun salutations, and then I end with another moment of gratitude for myself for doing the practice. I feel the effect in my body, right? I take a moment to feel that, which is really important at the end of any kind of physical or spiritual practice. Sit for a second and let yourself, do some awareness and some feeling of where your body and mind is at. It's really important to take at least 15 seconds to feel that positive state, because our nervous system registers trauma and negative experiences very quickly, and they make a very quick negative impression. But positive experiences have to last for about 15 seconds or more for it to really imprint on your brain.
And gratitude absolutely does that.
Exactly. And so that's why I do it at the beginning and at the end, because it gets you into the right mindset for the practice, and it really imprints it upon your subconscious that this is a good thing that you're doing for yourself, and it just makes it so much more powerful.
I love that. That's an incredible morning routine. I like that ritual. For me, gratitude was the starting point, sort of the springboard to where I'm at today. And anybody who knew me back in 2013, 14 would tell you, well, there's a soul that's hopeless and lost and will always be. And I remember coming across some Tony Robbins content one time, and he's talking about gratitude. And I'm like, maybe I should start doing that. And so I did. And it altered everything. Later found out through a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Joe Dispenza, and through some other scientists, that a thought introduces a whole set of chemicals and hormones, up to like 12 or 1400 of them, that are just instantly injected into our bloodstream. And with 2 pumps of the heart, these things are spread throughout our entire body. It's like 80,000 to 100,000 miles of blood vessels and veins. And that creates an emotion, which is magnetic in nature. And then we start sending out a magnetic energy that then brings back to us all that it's consistent with or similar to. And so to change a mood or an emotion, literally all we got to do, and it is this easy, is for about 2 minutes, think of everything there is to be grateful for.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that you started out and end it with gratitude.
Yeah, it's something that Andrew Huberman will talk about in the video. If anyone watches on the science of making and breaking habits, he calls it task bracketing. I think he calls it. And there's a lot of neuroscience behind why exactly that really makes a powerful impression on you. It makes you much more likely to repeat that behavior. But it's also just, like I said, it radically transforms the way that you relate to things when you practice being grateful. So yeah, that's the first part of the day. And that's how the challenge will start, is to do the breath work and to do the morning ritual. And so I've created my own morning ritual that's very, Christian. It's very religious. I know that's not going to work for everyone, depending on their background. But I want to provide that framework so that people can take that and just, put in whatever words or whatever, works for them in their tradition or, their life. Because it doesn't have to be, specifically Christian, but that's, the way that I practice. So that's me. So, and then my evening ritual that I'll be introducing in the third week is the same kind of concept. So it starts with gratitude for the moon. It's going to be right after sunset is usually typically when you do it, or before going to bed. It has a yoga flow that I call a sacral flow. So it's a flow that's based more in the sacral chakra, area as the focal point of the flow, whereas the sun salutations focus on the chest, and it opens up the heart center in the chest. In the evening one, it's the opposite pole of your core that you're focusing on opening. And so it's a sacral flow, same thing, gratitude, yoga, sit, meditation. I do a different practice at night. And you can see that on the blog as well. If you go to justinbirholz.com, the lunar invocation, it's all written out, what I do. My meditative practice, my prayers, my gratitude, it's all, explained there. And then I do the sacral flow again, and then the moment of gratitude for myself and doing the practice. So it's the same framework. I just do different prayer at the beginning, gratitude for the moon, and then a different flow, because I want to really have a balanced practice where I'm not just focusing on, kind of solar creative energy, but also focusing on that lunar reflective energy. And it's also balancing your body, because you're working on, your lower core and your upper core and opening up both centers throughout the day. And you're, practicing gratitude for the sun and the moon, right? Not just light, not just dark, because both are necessary, right? And so those two provide a really balanced kind of daily practice, and they form the core of my daily practice. So I'll be introducing both over the course of the challenge, with that framework.
I'm curious about something. I know that as we as individuals grow and progress and learn new things and acquire new skills and practice them and implement them, I mean, we sort of change our daily habits and rituals and routines. But since you've been doing this, one, how long have you? And what are the differences that you feel emotionally, spiritually, physically, before you started these practices and now?
Man, it's hard to even fully explain, I think, because I just started creating these and doing these practices for myself a couple of years ago, after a long time of research and practice. I was studying spiritual practices from a variety of traditions. So I studied like Sufi practices, chanting and breath work and singing and dancing and all their kind of repeating the names of God and all these things that they do. I studied some Jewish, Kabbalistic mystical practices. I studied yoga really deeply, a lot of yogic practices, and a lot of Christian mysticism and some Buddhist meditation practices. And I just went through all of it and found what I felt worked best for me and my personal, chemistry. And so the way that I think about these practices is very similar to the way that I think about breath and how it affects us. Like I was saying, the inhale is that alert, that sympathetic activation. That morning ritual, the sun salutation, the sun gratitude, the solar invocation, that's very awakening, enlivening. It really gets you going, and it creates this creative energy that just wells up Whereas the lunar one is more calming and reflective, and it helps you introspect and reflect on the day and, kind of analyze. And so I see them as you can use them specifically, once again, to kind of balance yourself out. If you find yourself really intense and really, anxious and too fired up, and you need to cool yourself down, do more of the lunar thing, spend more time on that, or if I, like this year, coming into 2022, I really wanted to create. I was in this mood where, okay, coming into 2022, I'm really going to kick it up a notch, and I'm going to get out there. I'm going to create more content. I'm going to write a lot. I'm going to, do a lot of work and be very active. And I kept getting the message that I needed to work on my third chakra. I needed to work on that fire, that, that motivation. And so I was just doing the solar for a little while, like a week or two. And just about a week or 2 weeks of just doing the solar invocation, not doing the lunar one in the evening. And I was there. I was already writing with people, getting out there and doing what I needed to do. It was almost instant that I had the motivation and the energy and the mindset to just really flip a switch, because in the winter I was not doing that. I was like, going out for holidays, I was playing video games and stuff like that. But I knew I needed to shift my energy to face this period that I was coming into, where I knew I needed to create more. And so I see these practices as tools where you can do that self-assessment of where you're at and apply whichever tool you need to get you to the right, energetic state for that circumstance.
I've learned that, results don't lie. And if we experiment with everything and we're open-minded enough to do so, that anything that we try produces a result. And if it works for us as an individual, then like you had said with your diet in the beginning, you're like, holy crap, I feel so much better. If it makes you feel better and react less, with less volatility and anger, and calms you and produces an energy that is more creative than destructive, then why not continue doing it? These things are easy to do, and they're also easy not to do. We can get distracted with life and with things and with fear. But to anyone listening, I really do suggest that you follow Justin on social media, learn from him, seek out information from him. I have followed him for quite a few years now, since we first met on social media, actually. And it's
about 4 or 5 years, I think.
Yeah. And it's been a huge benefit to me. So I really appreciate and acknowledge you for, what you've shared and what you teach as you learn it, and for all you've practiced. And sharing your story today has, for me, been really inspirational, man.
Yeah, thanks.
I think you're an individual who's definitely worth following. You inspire me on almost a daily basis as I get on social media. You're one of the main go-tos, and I really appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I feel the same. You've been a huge inspiration all along the way, throughout the whole process.
Yeah, I think, like Simon Sinek teaches, together is better. And if we can all collaborate and sort of get on similar pages, doesn't have to be the same one, and habituate practices like gratitude and yoga, meditation, especially breath work. Those are easy ways for us to alter our heart, our mind, our soul, and our body in beneficial ways, for sure.
Yeah.
What are some other things that you would suggest to people, or other things that you would like to share before we close today?
Oh, man. I guess what I would like to say is, the hardest part is just taking the first step. And, when you first start doing any kind of new practice, it's probably going to feel weird. You might feel really awkward about it. That's okay. The first, I don't know, half a dozen times I performed some of my rituals felt strange. I felt, I don't know if I'm doing this right, or if I should tweak this or that. But then, like I said, you see the results. And if you're working with someone else who's already done a practice before and they've had results, or a whole tradition of people, like, you know that you're going to get what you need out of it. Don't let yourself get in your own head and be like, oh, this is weird, I shouldn't be, this isn't me, or whatever, those kinds of limiting thoughts that get in your head. Don't let that stuff stop you, because I know there were times where I kind of second guess, but I just just had to stick with it.
Me too. And I really believe that a consistent daily habitual routine or practice that we design for ourselves is going to empower us to be better creators, better humans, better life partners, better parents, better in every way. Just like Jim Rohn says, if you want things to change for you, you've got to change, and I really love that.
Yeah. And then the last thing is that, speaking about changing yourself, one of the things that I've seen in kind of the collective culture and consciousness of humanity is this, what some people call the meaning crisis, or what I would call a kind of plague of disconnection. Disconnection from each other, from our own, body and emotions, disconnection from our planet. And so all of the things that I create are meant to rebuild those connections, right? Those moments of gratitude, the animals in your life, that moment of gratitude for your partner, those rebuild those connections where now all of that stuff is a part of you and you're a part of it. And that really just dramatically transforms the way that you treat people, the way that you treat animals, plants, and the world. And so I think we need a lot, more of that. And I think if we can, do that enough and get enough people to change their mindset as one of being connected rather than separate, it could really create some dramatic cultural shifts that we absolutely need. So, whatever practice you do, whatever tradition you go with, just make sure that you're moving towards connection and inclusion rather than exclusion. I don't like any groups that are exclusive. I think that just tends to end up really negatively in the way that people view others, because it creates that us versus them kind of mentality. And we've been living in that for too long. We're a global species now, and we need to move to a we space,
Yeah, I agree. I love that. And I loved something I heard on one of the Aubrey Marcus podcasts. He said, we're all far more similar than we are different.
Definitely.
We're all human and having a human experience. But truly, I think our actual identity is divine energy. It's the what we truly are as we continue to work towards upgrading the who we identify as individuals, that will sort of bring us back together to the one beingness that we all are. We're truly interconnected, and everything affects everything. So what you're doing affects it in a great way. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Pete.
All right. That wraps it up for today's episode of the Good in the Head podcast. Here we are, February 26, 2022, going into some interesting times. Use Justin. For any of the listeners, follow him, check him out, learn what he's learned, and try it out for yourself and see if it doesn't just magically transform and alchemize your reality in beautiful ways. Good in the Head website is at goodinthehead.com. There you'll find many, many tools, things that I've researched and learned over the years that have empowered me to be a better man. And I'm grateful, so grateful for all the many teachers out there that I've been able to learn from. Let's all do this together. That's what it's all about.
Yep.
And one thing I did want to mention in closing was yoga, and the fact that there are so many incredible sources for all of these practices. But Yoga with Adrian on YouTube is kind of where we started with yoga, and it has become a beautiful strengthening practice for us. What are some great sources that you would suggest to people?
Yeah. So my favorite yoga teacher is he goes by Yoga with Tim on YouTube.
Cool.
He's a local guy here from Southern California, surfer guy, my kind of person from my hood in Orange County, really laid back, really great teacher. And he does a free 30-day challenge every year at the beginning of the year. And each one includes a progressive teaching from like nothing, like just starting into yoga, through the philosophy, the breath work, the meditation. It's a full, complete yoga teaching, and he gets progressively more advanced through the physical practices as you go on through those 30-day challenges. So if you're going to start anywhere with yoga, I really recommend going back and checking out any of his challenges. They're all available on YouTube for free for like every year back. And trying one of those, because he walks you through and introduces you to all the concepts you'll need to know. And his instruction is really deep and intimate, because he really tells you how to position like your rib cage, your hip, how to rotate your arms and legs and everything. So he gives you very specific instruction that's almost like having someone personally there guiding you into the right position so that you're not doing the poses wrong. And he also teaches the philosophy and the breath work and the meditation, all included in a 30-day package. So I think that's one of the best places you could start
Nice.
for yoga. Yeah. And then if you want to know the real history of yoga, there's this book here. I don't know if you can see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really gold shimmery, called The Complete Book of Yoga by Swami Vivekananda. It was written in the early 20th century, and was one of the first complete teachings on yoga in English. And he's an amazing, amazing teacher. And he goes over the four main paths. So karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, and raja yoga. And it's, if you really want to deepen your knowledge of the real teachings, the ancient, teachings of yoga, and not just like the physical poses and that part, that's the place to go and to start. It's just an incredible collection of knowledge on traditional yoga. And then the other place is Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. So the original kind of formulation of yoga. You can find English translations pretty commonly. I think you can even find them online for free. Nice. Where you can read through the Yoga Sutras. And that process of reading through those will absolutely be transformative. It's unbelievable, unbelievable compilation of knowledge, and each one is condensed into as few words as possible, because that's what the sutra was. And so it's just like a lightning bolt every time, and there's like hundreds of them. It's unbelievable. So check out Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Vivekananda's Complete Book of Yoga, and Yoga with Tim on YouTube. Nice. Good resources.
Any books or social media following suggestions?
Definitely. So Andrew Huberman, I mentioned earlier. I think he's the best person to follow for scientific advice, like practical scientific advice on health and wellness. He's really good about providing specific protocols and practical ways that you can implement good, peer-reviewed science to improve your quality of life. His podcast and his Huberman Lab website are just an incredible resource.
Yeah, he's one of the world's top neuroscientists, for those who don't know anything about Andrew Huberman. He is incredible. Yeah, he's at Stanford. He's really, really well respected, definitely. So for scientific information, I definitely recommend that. When it comes to, spiritual or religious, there's a couple of YouTube channels that I really like that produce like reliable, academic, scholarly, non-polemic, information. One is called Esoterica on YouTube, and he goes over magic and mysticism and the esoteric, mostly focusing on like Western traditions. If you want to know about like the origins of Christianity, the origins of Judaism, Kabbalah, magic, alchemy, those types of things,
the guy who runs it, his name is Dr. Justin Sledge. And he, has a PhD in philosophy, and he's an incredible teacher, and he just brings a lot of information into his content, and he provides a ton of resources for books to look into it yourself. So if you're into like alchemy, ancient spiritual practices, that's a really good source. There's another channel called Religion for Breakfast that I really like for more modern information. If you just want to know about different spiritual traditions, what they believe, what they practice, where they came from, he produces really great content. Once again, I think he has a master's in religious studies or something. Quality academic content on different religious traditions. So for that side, I'd recommend that. And so those are probably my three favorite sources. And then there's a couple more. The channel Seekers of Unity on Facebook as well is one that I've supported for a while. And he is a Jewish guy in Israel who teaches Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism really deeply, profoundly, if you want to know about that. But he also does a lot of great interviews, and he specifically reaches out to people from other traditions and sits down and talks with them about their faith, and they have interfaith dialogues that are just really inspiring and really cool. So his whole channel is great. If you want to know anything about Kabbalah or Jewish mysticism or mysticism in general, philosophy as well. He does like whole hour-long episodes on like Spinoza and other famous philosophers, where he really digs into their philosophy, and he's a really great teacher. So those are all good sources.
That was on Facebook, the group called Seekers of Unity.
YouTube. Yeah.
YouTube Seekers of Unity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that would be online. For books, when it comes to magic or alchemy or anything like that, this book by Dean Radin called Real Magic is really incredible. He's a scientist, a researcher who researches the effects of consciousness and perception on affecting reality, essentially. So he's done a lot of cool research on how intention and prayer and stuff like that can literally affect the outcomes of experiments. Like they did one where they blessed water. They had like priests come and bless water, and then they used that water to water plants. Controlled experiment. They had some that wasn't blessed, and blah blah blah. Rigorous study, and the plants that received the blessed water grew way more than the other plants. And they did the same thing with chocolate. They blessed a little piece of chocolate, and they had people eat the chocolate and assess their mood and stuff afterwards. And the blessed chocolate produced this huge increase in mood in people where the non-blessed chocolate didn't. And he goes into, yeah. So he goes into all the scientific reasoning behind why things like prayer and intention and stuff actually do affect reality. So that book is super cool. Super cool.
I love that. I've seen quite a few different experiments with words. Everything is a vibration, and some of it is spiritual or out there in the ether, and we can't tangibly, physically touch or sense it or see it or hear it or taste it at all. But then words are a vibration, and when we infuse our food with a blessing before we eat, with a blessing, and the vibrations alter the food. They've done this research and proven that, hey, you want better food, bless it before you eat it. This interesting.
Yep, exactly. And so that's a really cool book if you want to know, the science behind how the magic, supposedly magic, but it's just the power of belief and intention on affecting reality. So those are really great. I'm trying to think if there's another religious text. So I was going to recommend any religious text because I want to do science, magic, and religion, because I think that all three are really important, and I'm really trying to into my practice and weave those three things together. So this one, The Divine Dance by Richard Rohr, I read this over Christmas.
Rich Rohr, I love him.
He's amazing teacher, and this book, The Divine Dance, will radically think of Christian theology. He presents a very inclusive, dynamic, very different vision of Christianity that I thought was really cool, and fits more with my own vision than a lot of the mainstream Christianity that you'll see out there. So I highly recommend that one as well.
There are so many people that I speak with that say, I'm no longer religious. I grew up in a certain religion. I no longer practice. I do consider, however, myself to be far more spiritual now. I mean, everything really does affect everything. The quantum realm, the science behind everything that we don't even know yet. I mean, there's so much out there we'll never know. But I really believe that everything affects everything. So anything we learn, anything we do, try out, anything we create, produces a result. And if the results are good for you, keep doing it. If it's bad for you or someone else, stop, change it, replace it with something that does work. You've given us some really great sources of information and the opportunity to grow in mind, body, soul, and spirit. And I really appreciate all that you are doing, all you've done, and what you've shared today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. And this will be uploaded to YouTube. It's Facebook Live. And if ever you want to learn some more practices that can empower you to create a better life, absolutely check out Justin Birholz. Thank you so much for your time, Justin.
Yeah.
All right. I'll give you a call in just a few minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Yeah. Bye.